This ship didn't crash in the desert. When the Eduard Bohlen ran aground in 1909, the Atlantic Ocean was right beside it. Today, the ocean is hundreds of meters away. The ship never moved. The world around it did.
And once you understand how that happened, an even stranger story begins to emerge. Because the Eduard Bohlen is not alone. Along this remote stretch of Namibia, at least 137 known shipwrecks have been recorded. Some are underwater, some have disappeared completely, and some are being swallowed by the desert. Look at a photograph of the Eduard Bohlen today, and your brain immediately tells you that something is wrong. A ship belongs in water. This one sits surrounded by sand. Its rusting hull stretches across the Namib Desert, with dunes collecting around what remains of a vessel that once crossed the Atlantic. According to a Namibian government marine planning report, the wreck now lies approximately 370 meters from the sea. Guinness World Records places it at more than 400 meters. The difference reflects measurements from different sources, but the point is the same. The ocean is no longer where it was in 1909. The Eduard Bohlen wasn't carried inland. It wasn't thrown into the desert by some impossible wave. It hasn't traveled hundreds of meters across the sand. It is still sitting roughly where its final journey ended. The coastline changed around it. But to understand why a ship ended up stranded here in the first place, we have to return to a morning more than a century ago. September 1909. The coast of what was then German Southwest Africa. The Eduard Bohlen was traveling along a coastline that could become almost invisible without warning. Not because of darkness, because of fog. Off Namibia, the cold Benguela current helps create dense coastal fog that remains one of the defining features of this landscape today. Namibia's Environment Ministry specifically identifies the Benguela current as a cause of the region's dense coastal fogs and cold sea breezes. On September 5th, the Eduard Bohlen ran aground near Conception Bay in thick fog. Namibia's own marine records confirm the grounding and the conditions surrounding it. Imagine the moment. You're moving through gray water. You can't clearly see the coast. Then the ship stops. Not gradually, not at a harbor. You're stuck. And when the fog finally allows you to understand where you are, you've reached one of the most unforgiving coastlines in southern Africa. After the grounding, the ship remained, year after year, decade after decade. But coastlines aren't fixed boundaries. Sediment moves. Beaches grow and retreat. Dunes migrate. Wind and ocean continually reshape the edge between land and sea. Along the Namibian coast, that process gradually transformed the landscape around the wreck. The ship didn't move deeper into the desert. Instead, sand accumulated seaward of it. The shoreline advanced, and the distance between the wreck and the Atlantic slowly grew. 10 meters, 50, 100, eventually hundreds. Today, standing beside the Eduard Bohlen, you can look toward an ocean that once reached the ship itself. And that's what makes the wreck so unsettling. Not because anything supernatural happened here, but because the photograph forces us to confront something we normally don't notice. Landscapes move. They simply move too slowly for us to watch. A human life may not be long enough to notice a coastline changing meter by meter, but leave a steel ship behind for more than a century, and suddenly you have a marker. The Eduard Bohlen tells us what the coast can do after a ship runs aground. The other wrecks tell us something about what happened before. Some were victims of fog. Others encountered strong seas, reefs, sandbanks, or mechanical trouble. And many have now disappeared. Namibia's Marine Planning Authority notes that numerous wrecks exist within its central marine planning area, but only a small number remain visible enough to serve as tourism or scientific sites. Others are underwater or have disappeared completely.
That's an important distinction. When people hear Skeleton Coast, it's easy to imagine hundreds of perfectly preserved ships lined up along the beach. That's not what exists. The coast destroys evidence too. Salt corrodes metal. Surf breaks structures apart. Sand buries what remains. Sometimes the ocean takes a ship. Sometimes the desert hides it. And sometimes it does both. The name sounds as if it must have come from the ships, but the skeletons weren't only made of steel. Whale and seal remains once littered stretches of the coast, alongside the remains of vessels lost offshore. Guinness notes both animal bones and wrecks as part of the landscape behind the coast's grim reputation. And in 1944, journalist John Henry Marsh published a book called Skeleton Coast, chronicling the dramatic wartime wreck and rescue of the Dunedin Star. The book itself is verifiably dated to 1944. The name endured. And it's difficult to imagine a more fitting one, but there's something almost misleading about calling this a graveyard. A graveyard is supposed to be still. This place isn't. The ocean moves, the fog moves, the dunes move. Even the boundary between land and sea moves. The wrecks are the only things trying to stay where they were. The Eduard Bohlen didn't crash in the desert. The beach moved, and the wreck stayed exactly where it was. But this isn't the oldest ship the Namibian coast has kept. Nearly 4 centuries before the Eduard Bohlen ran aground, another vessel disappeared somewhere along this coast. Then centuries passed. No wreck, no discovery, nothing. Until 2008. When workers digging through the Namibian desert found something beneath the sand. A ship that had been missing for almost 500 years. And what was still inside it is another story.